Everyone. My name is Sarah Fargo O'Brien, and I am your host for another episode of the Healing Hour. That is this podcast show. I don't know why do you see my little light behind me won't stay? My cord is, but it's so much better when it looks like I have a halo of light. It's killing me. I'm gonna have to fix it. It's bothering me. I can't see it behind me, and it's not as bright in here. Anyways, here we are. Welcome to Thursday. I don't know what kind of week you've had, but mine has been busy AF. Happy to be at Thursday, but today is no better than any of the other days. Today on the Healing Hour, we're going to be talking about the vagus nerve. I've had lots of shows here between July and August, and now a lot about mental health stuff, the body, mind, body, neuroscience, neurobiology, neurophysiology, the internal changes that we then see in external behaviors and beliefs that are often problematic or unhelpful in our roles and functions today. So the vagus nerve is one of those things that we probably don't know much about, but it affects a lot of things. And the more we can know about it, the better it is for us. If you are here, let me know that you're here. I would love to give you a little shout out. I appreciate people that tuning in to have a conversation with me and answer your questions and anything else while I'm here. Who do we have? We have Cambria. Hi. Greetings to you as well. I'm so glad you think this is an awesome topic. I'm glad that you are here. And thank you for this fun comment. The halo of light is way pretty. I know, right? Like, come on. Stay. I can't. I'm gonna have to fix it later because it really does. Do you guys see like my whole concept here? The name of my businesses are Thrive and Shine, counseling, coaching, and consulting. That is the sunshine, y'all. If it's not shining, are we not thriving? I need it on. I'll have to fix it after that. Thank you for your comment, Cambria. I'm so glad that you're here. Hope you learned something helpful today. Let's see if I have any announcements here. Let me think. Let me get my brain on before I do my check-in and 3 deep breaths. I have several friends that have podcasts. I'm going to list them at the end here and encourage you guys to check those out for all kinds of wonderful information. And so other than like a direct sponsorship, which isn't really happening for the Healing Hour, we do have friends of the Healing Hour. And the Healing Hour is friends of other shows. I like to support my friends who have podcasts, and I think they like to support me in my podcasts, and all of us trying to do our work in the world. So stay tuned to hear some of those. One of them is with my good friend, Andrew. Good morning, Andrew. I'm so happy that you are tuning in today live. Andrew has the Let's Be Diverse podcast. He is an HR professional, and he does a lot of peopling and connecting and lots of good leadership and people topics on the Let's Be Diverse podcast. So feel free to check that out. Thank you for being here this morning and chiming in, Andrew. I appreciate that. Check in. I've had a busy morning, y'all. I am enrolled in 3 days of a continuing education training that's also going to give me a new certification. It starts at 9 a.m. Every day, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and ends at 5:40. And I still have like a bunch of things to do in between. So I'm trying to catch some of the hours of this training in between when I have other stuff, and then I'll have access to the videos to go follow up later to finish my certification. But so far, it's been me sitting at my desk from like 9 to 6. And we're probably going to do the same thing today to sort of try to get through some of this training material, y'all. 21 hours of training is a lot to do. It's a lot to do virtually. It's a lot to listen to. It's a lot of stuff to absorb. But once I am done with it, I am going to be certified in DBT. Which works great for all of the populations in which I serve in my private practice for psychotherapy, which are anxiety disorders, substance use disorders, and trauma disorders and responses, particularly things like betrayal trauma, relational trauma, early childhood trauma, and CPTSD, complex trauma. DBT is really helpful modality and skills and concepts that work really well for individuals that struggle with symptoms of CPTSD. If you have CPTSD, you're in good company. I also have CPTSD. It is not my fault I have CPTSD. I grew up in a very traumatic and toxic family environment, and this is where we are. I am working on my trauma healing. It has been a long, arduous road, folks. Like, it's a bitch. I say trauma healing is not for the faint of heart. It's pretty exhausting, and you can probably imagine me doing all of that on top of being a therapist and facilitating other people walking through their healing journeys. I'm quite tired all the time in the last couple of years. But I do love my work and hoping to get into some other things. So if you want to learn more about me, go to my website, www.sarahobrienlcsw.com. I have free resources. I have digital downloads. I have videos, guest speaking appearances that I've done on all kinds of topics, everything I've ever written, and it's been published, from short blurbs in bigger articles to full blog articles. I actually wrote a blog article about the vagus nerve for Integrate Trauma Informed Network. So go check out their Substack. It's called You Belong, to check out that. I think that's it. I've been busy already this morning. I don't know. My brain already feels like a little bit like mush, and I have like 2 full days to go still, of trying to absorb things and do things. I also start meetings with my students from Cleveland State University today as adjunct faculty. So that's something new that I'm doing, and that's something new that I have going on today. So I hope all that goes well. And before I do my three deep breaths and dive into our content, let's see what Cambria says here. Had an appointment with my therapist on Tuesday and told her my goals are to utilize modalities of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and DBT during sessions. That's great. I know for a lot of the mental health and physical health things that you have going on, Cambria, DBT is going to serve you well. There's some excellent skills. We all could use them. I don't know anybody that couldn't benefit from knowing some stuff about DBT and how to apply it to their life. So yeah, I actually interned on a DBT team my second year in graduate school. I spent half of my week for that entire year working on a DBT team. So, and like I said, I'm working on my certificate to be a certified DBT clinician here right now, technically. So excellent stuff. I'm glad that you are diving into that. All right, let's take 3 deep breaths to get our nervous systems like ready, calm, and set up for today's content. So in through your nose, out through your mouth. Try to extend both inhale and exhale, and that will give us sort of that calming feeling in our nervous system. Excuse me. Okay, here we go. Breath number 1. Exhale. Breath number 2. And exhale. Breath number 3. And exhale. Okay, let me get my slide deck back over here for you guys. So, the vagus nerve. Why is this important for healing? Sort of any kind, but you know me, big in the trauma. So we're going to be talking a lot about that. So with Yeah, with advances in neuroscience research and information from polyvagal theory, we know that the vagus nerve plays a significant role in our brain and body functioning. And if you don't know what its role is in brain and body functioning, well, you in luck today. You are going to learn what this is today. And this is not just important for mental health, this is also important for physical health. Learning how to stimulate the vagus nerve in healthy ways and learning how to calm over reaction so that our body is functioning properly is important for you to kind of feel your best and be able to like do your best, whatever that is, be who you want to be. So we're going to talk about what it is and what it does. We're going to talk about what it looks like if you have problems with your vagus nerve, symptoms, or related illnesses. We're going to talk about how the vagus nerve gets injured, and we're going to talk about how that injury impacts people, how it impacts functioning. It's not a ton of content today. I think it will maybe like be a little less overwhelming than some of my past topics, but be sure to go check those out, particularly the neuroscience of anxiety, the neuroscience of addiction, and the neuroscience of trauma. Those are extremely informational podcast episodes I've done. I did a lot of research to just have myself up to date and putting all that out there. Neuroscience research is what informs my practice and what informs how I understand how the body and brain work and how mental illness and mental health disorder come about, given neuroscience research and information. And I find it like makes the most sense. It makes the most sense for me. It makes the most sense for my clients. Have a comment here from Cambria again. Speaking of the physical stuff I have going on, I recently was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I believe that condition exists because of mental health trauma being trapped in my somatic body. And you are pretty much right on. And fibromyalgia is one of those diseases and disorders that is linked to past trauma, as well as a number of other autoimmune things. And I talked about it somewhere. I can't remember if it's in this podcast or one of my past episodes, but go ahead and check those out, Cambria, and anybody else that's tuning in. They're very informative. It's basically like a free webinar for you. It's going to give you a lot of information that you might find really useful, either in your own healing journey or understanding maybe a difficult person in your life or a person in your life that has unhelpful behaviors and maybe what they might be going through. Okay. Diving into our content, be sure to ask questions. If you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them throughout this episode. And if I don't get to them here, I do my best to go back after these episodes and answer and respond to comments in the feed on LinkedIn for those. You also can be watching this or watch the replay on my YouTube channel, and that is just youtube.com/@timelesstherapist. youtube.com/@timelesstherapist. Okay, vagus nerve. What is it? This is the main nerve of your parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is the involuntary part of the nervous system. We might go in more into that, but just know there's a sympathetic part of your nervous system and the parasympathetic part of your nervous system. And the vagus nerve is connected to the parasympathetic part of your nervous system. Hi, Leanna. It's totally okay that you're fashionably late. That's me these days. I get it. I'm so glad that you are here. We are learning about the vagus nerve. Thank you for tuning in and letting me know that you're here. Okay, the vagus nerve is the longest of the 12 cranial nerves, and it makes up 3/4 of the nerve tissue in your parasympathetic nervous system. So, like, it's almost entirely the parasympathetic nervous system is the vagus nerve. It is very impactful. It is making up almost this entire half of your nervous system. It is responsible for many bodily functions and regulating your nervous system. And specifically, here we go, I knew it was somewhere. The parasympathetic part of the nervous system is responsible for the rest and digest bodily functions. So these are not like the active, let's like move and flee, bodily functions. These are when we are in rest and digest. And the vagus nerve helps facilitate these body functions and processes. It is also an essential part of your autonomic nervous system. This part of your nervous system controls the things your body does automatically, such as breathing, digestion, and sweating, among some other things. It's pretty interesting. The parasympathetic nervous system calms your body after you've been in a stressful situation. It helps your body exit the fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode. So if your nervous system has been activated and we are in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, the parasympathetic nervous system is what facilitates you moving out of that heightened hyperarousal state and into a more calm, balanced nervous system state. Okay, so it's important. We need this. We have this. It is very important functioning in our body. The vagus nerve is also responsible for carrying signals from your brain to other parts of your body, like your heart and intestines, to initiate this process of helping your body exit fight or flight. So we know when we're in fight or flight, things like digestion slow and blood pumps out to the extremities rather than from the base of your body for fighting, fleeing, right? And so the parasympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve is going to facilitate blood flow back to throughout your system and not just your extremities. It's going to help speed up digestion again, because we don't need to slow that down. We don't need to slow that down for conserving energy for fighting or fleeing. We are out of that, and we can now get back to sort of like our normal equilibrium, like our back to our typical baseline of body functioning. And our vagus nerve is very integral in making that happen after we've been activated or experienced a traumatic situation. Like if you experience like a car accident, like we are definitely going to go into the sympathetic nervous system. We are going to go into arousal, into shock, into all kinds of things. And then even after a situation like that, your vagus nerve and your parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for like sort of bringing all that back down. We cannot live at that heightened state that you feel maybe after something traumatic like a car accident for forever. And if you live in a chronic hyperarousal state, it's really bad for your internal body, which is what happens for individuals with lived experience of trauma. They kind of live at that heightened arousal, and it's wreaking havoc on their brain and internal systems and functioning. The vagus nerve is one thing internally in the body that gets impacted by both physical trauma and psychological, emotional trauma. These functions, so the vagus nerve carries signals from your brain to other parts of your body to initiate like the process of exiting fight or flight. These functions that are being initiated by the vagus nerve are involuntary, meaning you can't consciously control them. They happen automatically, like breathing, blinking, sneezing, right? Like you don't have to think about digesting to digest. You don't have to think about sweating to sweat. Your body just does that when you're hot and overheated, right? When you eat food, your body just digests it naturally. That's what it's made to do. It does not require you doing anything. It's just how your body works. What does the vagus nerve do? So if we're talking about the parasympathetic nervous system and remembering what it helped, like I said in the beginning, I couldn't remember what it helps. And I should have remembered rest and digest and feed and breed. So these little rhymes can help describe the functions of the parasympathetic nervous system, like feeding and breathing and resting and digesting. And we do these things without like conscious effort or thought. Your vagal nerves are part of your body's nervous system. If I haven't said that enough, they play important roles in involuntary sensory and motor or movement functions, including all of these things, guys. Super interesting. So your vagal nerves are responsible for functioning of your heart rate, taste, speech, skin sensations, muscle sensations, immune system responses, respiratory rate, blood pressure, mucus production, saliva production, digestion, the frequency in which you urinate, and your mood, right? Like a lot of physical things and some other things mixed in there. The vagus nerve is very important in your body functioning. All right, moving into like what are some illnesses or disorders related to vagus nerve issues? One is gastroparesis. Folks maybe have heard of this. As a result of this condition, gastroparesis prevents food from moving through your digestive system, meaning it's moving really slowly. And we just talked about how the vagus nerve like helps us digest, actually speeds that up. And it's the sympathetic nervous system that slows it down. So if it's too slow and we can't move food through our system, we can develop a condition called gastroparesis. Some cases of this are caused by a damaged vagus nerve resulting from surgery, diabetes, an infection, or an autoimmune disorder. There's also something called vasovagal syncope, and this is what this results in is that you are more likely to faint in hot weather when you are hungry or anxious or in other uncomfortable situations. So damage to the vagus nerve could result in this issue, vasovagal syncope, which means basically when your system gets like into some hyper arousal, whether you're hot, hungry, anxious, or something else uncomfortable, you will faint. This is a vagus nerve response, basically, to a damaged vagus nerve. Essentially, the vagus nerve will overreact to these situations, the being hot, hungry, anxious, that kind of thing. And it causes your blood pressure to drop very quickly, making you dizzy and causing a fainting spell. So if you experience this and have past trauma, you might want to look into some things that help heal and stimulate your vagus nerve. If you have a lot of GI problems or you've been diagnosed with gastroparesis and you have a history of trauma, you might want to look into vagus nerve healing and stimulation to help not only heal trauma, but also heal the effects of that trauma, which is now negatively impacting your GI and maybe some other functions. So what can we identify as symptoms of a vagus nerve issue? So vagus nerve conditions cause different symptoms depending on the specific cause and the affected part of your nerve. So we've said that it runs kind of all the way down. It's very long nerve. It's the longest basically running from like your brainstem down your spinal cord. And so depending on like if there's a physical injury to a different part of like that long nerve, then you might experience different symptoms, right? Like if the injury is higher up, like in your brainstem or neck, it could be and likely is a different response than if you have an injury down lower, like in your back. Some symptoms that might indicate a vagus nerve issue or abdominal pain and bloating, acid reflux, or esophageal, so like your esophagus, gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD, those types of things can be a vagus nerve issue. Changes to your heart rate, blood pressure, or blood sugar, difficulty swallowing, or the loss of your gag reflex could be a vagus nerve issue. Dizziness or fainting, like we just talked about with the vasovagal syncope. Hoarseness. Hey guys, hoarseness. Me. People have been asking me that forever. Like, why do you sound like that? You smoke? Like, you scream all the time? No, dude. Honestly, after all this research and everything, it's probably damage to my vagus nerve due to my past trauma. And that's why I have a hoarse voice that's kind of raspy and scratchy. To be quite honest with you, other people in my family also have this. Like both of my brothers kind of have a little bit of a hoarse voice and those types of things. And so I found that to be really interesting. And I think that's why, it's like this. So Hoarseness, wheezing, or loss of voice can be a symptom of a vagus nerve issue. Loss of appetite, feeling full quickly, or unexplained weight loss. Only unexplained weight loss could be a vagus nerve issue. Nausea and vomiting, anxiety, panic attacks, chronic pain, and fatigue or chronic fatigue. Lots of stuff, guys, that people explain away, or it's because of this, or everybody in my family had chronic pain. Well, it's probably related to something, and we maybe can do something about it if we expand our scope of possible causes for those types of issues, symptoms or damage. So exactly how does the vagus nerve incur this injury or damage? Well, trauma, like I said, physical, psychological, emotional, surgical complications. And so that's like an actual physical injury to the nerve with a sharp object from surgery. Underlying medical conditions like diabetes can cause damage to the vagus nerve. By having some other disease or illness or compression on the nerve itself. This is how the vagus nerve incurs injury. So medical conditions that can cause injury to the vagus nerve. We've talked about some gastrointestinal disorders such as gastric ulcers, esophageal reflux, and tumors in the chest or abdomen. And tumors in the chest or abdomen potentially can be compressing on the nerve, and that can be damaging it. And in some cases, infections like Lyme disease or viral meningitis can also negatively impact the vagus nerve and its functioning. Surgical complications that can cause injury to the vagus nerve or procedures involving the neck, chest, and abdomen may unintentionally damage or compress the nerve fibers, leading to adverse effects on the body's organs and systems. Physical trauma that can cause injury to the vagus nerve include accidents, like physical accidents, surgical procedures like we talked about, sports-related injuries, car accidents, falls, or direct blows to the neck or chest can lead to damage of the vagus nerve fibers, disrupting their normal functioning. So this physical trauma, like to the body or to the nerve itself, but also emotional trauma can cause injury to the vagus nerve. During traumatic experiences, the vagus nerve helps modulate physiological responses like stress, heart rate, breathing, blood pressure. We talked about like the whole list of things that it controls basically. And so it's controlling and helping modulate stress, heart rate, breathing, and blood pressure during emotional trauma. And in cases of chronic or severe trauma, the vagus nerve may become dysregulated, leading to symptoms of hyperarousal, hypervigilance, and emotional dysregulation. So if the vagus nerve is dysregulated, that means it's not helping you move back into rest and digest functions. Instead, it's preventing that, and then you are remaining in a hyperarousal, dysregulated state in your nervous system. And this is something we know many people with lived experiences of trauma experiences, this most emotional dysregulation. I just find it super interesting that emotional dysregulation can be linked back to like a physical thing we can see in the body, which is vagus nerve malfunctioning, basically. And that vagus nerve can start malfunctioning as a result of trauma, right? And then ongoing of that, it just further negatively impacts the vagus nerve, which further negatively impacts your body, nervous system, and brain functioning and pathways, which just further negatively impacts your beliefs, behaviors, actions, and cognitions. And then we get into a lot of dysfunction in life, in roles, in responsibilities. What I find interesting, and again, like I always kind of bring this back to why my show is called The Healing Hour. I think the more we know about this stuff, the more compassionate we can be with ourselves, the more compassionate we can be with other people. If we can like even say and pinpoint emotional dysregulation is linked to a physical body issue, then maybe there's less judgment and stigma for people who can't regulate their emotions well. I can't regulate my emotions well because I incurred childhood trauma. That's not my fault. I didn't ask for that. I don't want to be like this. I didn't want my vagus nerve to have problems. I did not want to feel dysregulated all the time and have difficulty modulating those or sitting with those or coping with those. Nobody taught me how to cope. And then in addition to that, I experienced things in extremes, in intensity, all because of my childhood trauma. And yes, it's my responsibility to try to learn emotional regulation skills now. But before all of that came into my awareness, I can guarantee I was engaging in unhelpful behaviors. And I've incurred a lot of judgment as a result of that. People just have not been sensitive to understanding my own trauma. And I think the more that we can, I feel like knowledge is power. Kind of always thought that. I'm a lifelong learner. I find these things interesting. I like to research stuff. I like to know the facts and figures. And, in my little belief of that, I think that if other people know these facts and figures, it at least gives them some place to go rather than just straight up judgment of somebody else's poor or unhelpful behavior. If we have an understanding of maybe where that originates, yes, does somebody need to be responsible for their poor unhelpful behavior? Absolutely. But we maybe not need blame them and judge them for engaging in that unhelpful behavior to begin with, because it's likely not their fault. Emotional trauma experiences can alter the functioning of the vagus nerve. Like I was saying, chronic stress, like that lives in your body from unresolved trauma, can lead to reduced vagal tone, impairing this nerve's ability to regulate bodily functions effectively, right? So if there's reduced vagal tone, you have to think it's like not as strong. Like if you think of like a weak muscle. And so if a weak muscle can't like lift as much, then a reduced vagal tone means it can't modulate or regulate your system as much, right? It can't speed up digestion the way it's supposed to. You can't get into rest and calm modes like you're supposed to because the muscle, which is the vagus nerve, actually is not functioning well or is weak with the reduced vagal tone. This type of dysfunction can disrupt the body's ability to return to a state of calm after stress. If you remember me saying that a little bit ago, that the vagus nerve is responsible for moving us out of fight or flight mode. And if you have damage to the vagus nerve, you have this reduced vagal tone, then that's the thing that's responsible for returning your body back to calm. If it's not working well, then we're not really getting back to calm, which then our nervous systems and our brains are living in this heightened arousal state, which means cortisol is pumping and a number of other internal functions happening. And when that's going on, like some behaviors come out that are just a result of that. So asking somebody to like calm down when they're not calm, not helpful. Expecting somebody to behave in a stressful situation that you do, or to return to baseline as quickly as you do is faulty and short-sighted. You have no idea if they have reduced vagal tone. So therefore, their ability to return to a state of calm after a stressful situation might be completely different than yours as a result of that and take a whole lot longer. There's nothing wrong with that person. They're not weak or too emotional or too sensitive. They literally have an internal injury that impacts the way these things happen. So if your physical body cannot return to a calm state, then you will feel this, right? Internally, cortisol output doesn't stop. Breathing and breath rate doesn't return to normal. Heart rates can remain elevated. Body tension and muscle tension can be lasting. If this is happening inside of your body, it will be noticeable on the outside in terms of behaviors, beliefs, cognitions, and functioning. Okay. What happens to functioning post-trauma? Like, so vagus nerve functioning and our own functioning. Heads up, The next slide is going to have sensitive content. Let me go through the content on this slide, and then I'll explain what that is. And you can choose to like step out or mute me for a few minutes if you don't want to hear the sensitive content example that I have. So just giving you guys a heads up when I get through this slide, when I say I'm moving to the next slide, it's a sensitive content. If you don't want to hear what it is, mute and turn away. There are no visuals. It's just words and it's just me talking about it. But if that's not going to work for you in your nervous system, then feel free to mute, take a break, or step out or exit entirely and watch the rest of this later. Okay, so what happens to functioning post-trauma? During traumatic experiences, the vagus nerve helps modulate, saying again, physiological responses to stress like heart rate, breath rate, blood pressure. In cases of chronic or severe trauma, the vagus nerve may become dysregulated, like we're saying, and or that reduced vagal tone, leading to these things of these symptoms of hyperarousal, hypervigilance, and emotional dysregulation. So when the sympathetic nervous system, the one that's responsible for the body's fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, is overactive, it can inhibit the vagus nerve's ability to promote relaxation and healing. It becomes underactive after experiencing the trauma because the sympathetic system is overactive. Okay, so an overactive fight, flight, freeze, fawn response in the body can and often leads to an underactive vagus nerve, which means our ability to return to rest and digest is negatively impacted or impaired. My sensitive content is coming up. If you do not want to listen, please take your exit now. I will give you a second for that. Okay. So here is an example of where emotional trauma has caused vagus nerve dysfunction. A person who had to identify their father's body after he completed suicide developed gastroparesis afterward. This is that debilitating condition marked by nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain due to slow to halting digestion, which is a result of the vagus nerve not working well. So eventually, the condition can get so bad that folks have been unable to leave their house and requires psychotherapy treatment to manage stress, anxiety, and trauma activations. So we need psychotherapy to manage stress, anxiety, and trauma activations in order to get the vagus nerve to start working properly again. As stated, this is an example where emotional trauma has caused the vagus nerve dysfunction. To the point of developing a diagnosable medical condition with physical and health symptoms and implications, okay, from trauma, from having to identify the body of their father. So underactive or dysfunctional vagus nerve, like I'm saying, leads to slow digestion, causing this GI issue. And let me just also say here, guys, like if somebody had a GI issue, we wouldn't be like, what's wrong with you? Why do you have that? What have you not done? You didn't eat well? Like what and it's like we don't do that probably nearly as much for physical health conditions. But if somebody says, if somebody says I have gastroparesis and I have a lot of vomiting and nausea and abdominal pain, people aren't quick to say, what's wrong with you? Why did that happen? Why do you have that? Why do you have that disease, that disorder, that illness, that diagnosis? Doesn't happen so much. But if somebody says I have CPTSD or I have trouble regulating my emotions due to blank illness or disorder, and insert like a mental health one, people are like, what's wrong with you? Like, how did that happen? Why do you act like that? All right, this is not helpful, folks. Like, I freaking hate that shit. I don't know what else to say about it. It's like, we can't be empathetic and sympathetic in one area of health and then be stigmatizing and judging in the other. That makes you hypocritical. It's not a good look. In fact, it's like super gross to me. I don't like it at all. Especially since my whole world is living and working in mental health. let alone having like my own issues with that. But if we are not quick to judge people for their physical health issues, then we also need not be quick to judge people for their mental health issues. Like, nobody's causing these things themselves. Trust me. Do you want gastroparesis? Do you want cancer? Then that's the same thing where people like, do you want CPTSD? Do you want bipolar disorder? F no. Nobody wants that. This is just happening. Everybody has to deal with this. They have to get treatment for this. They have to find a way to cope with gastroparesis symptoms. They have to find a way to cope with OCD symptoms, right? Or whatever it is. So judging folks for it is just hurtful. There's no other word to say. You're just harming people and making them feel isolated and less than over something that's not their fault. So more about what happens to our functioning post a traumatic experience. So, right, we talked about like the reduced vagal tone, the under like reactivity or under functioning of the vagus nerve. We talked about overreactivity or overfunctioning of the sympathetic nervous system in fight, flight, freeze, and hyperarousal. Those are the things that are happening inside post-trauma. What is noticeable on the outside post-trauma? Don't forget these things. Like, remember, we were just talking about these things a little bit ago. So what we notice on the outside, post-trauma in terms of vagus nerve damage are abdominal pain and bloating, acid reflux, changes to heart rate, blood pressure, blood sugar, difficulty swallowing, loss of gag reflex, dizziness or fainting, hoarseness, wheezing, or loss of voice, loss of appetite, feeling full quickly, or unexplained weight loss, nausea and vomiting, anxiety, panic attacks, chronic pain, and fatigue, right? That's what we see on the outside. What do we do? How do we heal the vagus nerve, right? Sarah, what do we do? This is inside of us. I can't touch it. I'm not a medical provider. I can't like physically intervene. Good news, we don't have to. There are other ways to stimulate, healthy vagus nerve functioning, and to heal the dysfunction that exists. Even if your vagus nerve issues are from past emotional trauma, there's something we can do. And I always appreciate being empowered with something I can do myself. And something that I can do without having to see a medical provider, because if you're anything like me and you have a whole host of issues, you probably also have medical trauma from being dismissed, invalidated, and treated like shit at the doctor's office. And so if I can do anything myself first, I would rather try to sort it out with all the skills and abilities and things I can do before having to see a medical provider. That's just me. I'm not recommending you not see a medical provider. If you have physical health issues, if you have mental health issues, absolutely get that opinion. I do so when it's absolutely necessary, but I also like to feel empowered to do some things without medical intervention. You may want to do that as well. So how to heal vagus nerve injuries. Therapies that can help activate the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system that facilitate relaxation and emotional regulation. So engaging in therapies or therapeutic interventions that activate the parasympathetic nervous system and facilitate feelings of relaxation and regulation in your nervous system. By focusing on vagal regulation, folks can build resilience, restore balance to their nervous systems, and cultivate greater capacity for self-regulation and emotional well-being. There are some mind-body interventions you can do. Diaphragmatic breathing. We do this with the 3 deep breaths before this show every single week. When I say elongate the exhale, that's diaphragmatic breathing. If we're trying to slow things down, take in a very full deep breath and then a slow exhale of that deep breath, we are in diaphragmatic breathing. This is something that is promoting healing and healthy functioning of the vagus nerve, and it is facilitating feeling relaxed and calm internally inside your body. Yoga is another mind-body intervention that can heal and facilitate healthy functioning of your vagus nerve. Mindfulness practices, and that means just sticking with one present thing in the moment. So that's like noticing what you're doing while you're doing it without judgment. Meditation. So this is actively trying to sit with things that are there that are uncomfortable, again, without judgment, but allowing yourself to experience it. You can engage in cold plunge therapy, a cold shower, or holding ice. Ironically, this is also a DBT skill linked to TIP, temperature change, intense physical activity, or progressive muscle relaxation, TIP. And so intense, no, temperature change, the T, and tip is cold. We always go cold, not hot. Hot will hurt you, damage you, cause injury. Cold, not so much, but a cold plunge, those people who do cold plunge therapy, it's excellent for your vagus nerve. As much as you don't want to do that, and if you're dysregulated in some way, putting an ice pack on the back of your neck, on your head, on your chest, can definitely really help facilitate calming of the nervous system and healthy vagus nerve functioning. Those are mind-body interventions. Specific psychotherapeutic interventions, these are things that you would need to go see a licensed psychotherapist to have access to. Something like EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. This is a form of energy medicine designed to reduce trauma-based stress by remembering the trauma while focusing the eyes on a particular point. This sort of has a dual action thing going on in the brain. And when you can recall trauma and then do certain eye movements, we sort of reintegrate things in the brain, and it reduces the reactivity for the trauma memories. There's a lot of science behind that and how it activates both sides of the brain at the same time. And that's part of what facilitates like the calming of that activation with those trauma memories. That's how that works. Not only do you need to see a licensed psychotherapist to receive EMDR treatment, they also need to be trained and certified in providing EMDR. I am not. I do not do EMDR. It is not a modality that I feel like I have needed to invest the amount of time and money it takes to become certified in EMDR. I have found some other modalities are helpful in terms of my practice and the clients that I treat with complex trauma and chronic trauma situations. So it's not the only thing that will heal vagus nerve and past trauma. So keep that in mind. Other psychotherapeutic interventions that are helpful are CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to address unhelpful neural pathways that are ingrained from chronic traumatic situations. So these are beliefs and views a lot of the time that we have ingrained due to childhood trauma or chronic trauma situations, beliefs about ourselves, about the world, about relationships, about the way things work, the association we've made between things. CBT can help with that. CPT is cognitive processing therapy, and this is used to assist with recognition and processing of traumatic events. I use cognitive processing therapy. This is not what we start with, guys. So let me be clear. It's not like you jump into therapy and start with processing your trauma. There's a lot of build up to this, but this is one of the things that I use in my practice. It does require a skilled clinician that can hold space and help clients regulate. And then, of course, DBT, which we were talking about a little bit at the beginning of the healing hour as I'm working through my certification for this. And this is used to address unhelpful habits and learn more effective and healthy habits for reaching nervous system calm states. And then somatic interventions can also be psychotherapeutic, and this includes deep breathing coupled with brain rewiring. So some mind-body things are just the deep breathing, right? When it's a somatic intervention and it's like psychotherapeutic in nature, we are inducing a sense of calm coupled with brain rewiring, often in terms of using some of these other things, processing, cognitive behavioral therapy, and considering our beliefs, cognitions, and how these things play out in our life, relationships, behavior, work. Okay, those are like, so we talked about mind-body interventions, we talked about psychotherapeutic interventions, but then there are also like what we call like physical interventions, and directly to the vagus nerve itself inside your brain stem and spinal cord, right? Okay, so this is called transcutaneous vagal nerve stimulation, and this delivers electrical impulses to the vagus nerve directly. This innovative treatment involves stimulating the nerve through the skin, so they don't it's not invasive in that way. Okay, so it's through the skin, electrical impulse through the skin, stimulating the nerve, which has shown promise to alleviate symptoms related to trauma and stress. The FDA has approved vagal nerve stimulation to treat epilepsy and depression that doesn't respond to standard therapies. Anything that doesn't respond to standard therapies is known as treatment resistant, whatever it is. You could have treatment resistant Parkinson's disease. That was my mom. You could have treatment resistant cancer. You can have treatment resistant depression. And so in cases like the epilepsy and depression, like actual physical stimulation of the vagus nerve can help. This type of treatment, the stimulation, is also being investigated for additional treatment of additional disorders, including cluster headaches, inflammatory bowel disease or IBD, which is, extreme form of IBS, pain, PTSD, and rheumatoid arthritis. So the jury is still out. The FDA would have to approve that for it to come to market, to be used in medical situations of any kind. So, but it's kind of cool that they're doing research on these things and seeing if stimulating the vagus nerve can help with some diseases and disorders that are extremely impactful for people. Okay, that is all of my content. I hope you found learning about the vagus nerve interesting, helpful, and some things to look out in yourself or in the people that you love and care about, and maybe suggest some healing for them or for yourself. How can I help you further with vagus nerve healing or understanding? I'll alert you first to the freebies on my website, www.sarahobrienlcsw.com. There is the trauma responses quick reference sheet. So to recognize, are we in fight, flight, freeze, fawn? What does that look like? And if we are in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, it's at that point we want to maybe practice one of those mind-body interventions to soothe the nervous system and return the vagus nerve back to like its normal functioning. There are natural remedies for managing anxiety. So these are not psychopharmacological, so not medication-based, not medically based, not psychotherapeutically based. These are natural remedies, things like mindfulness, some herbs, some other things. So grab that handout. Those are free under the free resources section on my website. I also create like some self-help digital products, workbooks, and ebooks. These are all research informed and based. Guys, I have I can't even tell you, like a million of things like this that just have all kinds of stuff that I can apply to my digital products to facilitate your healing and potentially facilitate your individual efforts in your healing, right? These are guides, they have prompts, they have journals, prompts, they have reflection questions, they have practice things, places for you to take notes or track things. So go grab one of my digital products, some that might be particularly helpful for vagus nerve healing and balancing would be the Intuition and Inner Knowing digital workbook. And this is designed to create self-trust and inner safety. And that is going to help us move out of the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. And we only trust and rest and digest when we have safety or inner safeness that we feel. I also have the self-care kit, which is a number of handouts and items for you. And it is a comprehensive digital workbook designed to increase awareness about your current self-care habits and adding new habits and affirmations into your life. That is a whole kit with several different pieces and handouts there. It is $19. You can go get it on my website right now. I do one-on-one skills coaching. If you want to learn how to practice some of these like strategies, or a coach as you dive into cold plunge therapy options or something like that. I'll go over what my September special is on the next page. And then, of course, if you just want to educate your team, your organization, your executive team, leadership about anything related to healing, wellness, psychological safety, including understanding impacts on the vagus nerve and that type of thing, I am available for consulting. Let's see. Okay. September special. You schedule one coaching session with me. So a one-to-one session, either 30-minute or 60-minute. And yes, the 30-minute is less expensive than the 60-minute. So it doesn't matter which one. You will get 2 of my digital products for free. That includes any of the kits. So you can get more than a workbook, as the kits have like some extra things in it. And you get 2 of those free if you schedule and attend at least one-to-one coaching session with me. You can use my Calendly link to find 30-minute sessions. If you want an hour-long session, just book 2 back-to-back. If you're having trouble finding available times based on that calendar, just shoot me an email. It's sarahefobrien@gmail.com, and you can find my email on my website. And let me know like when you would like to schedule, or there are not 2 slots back to back and you want to know when you can come in for your hour. Okay. Just reach out to me. That's going on for all of September. Okay. I may or may not change my topic for next week, but this is kind of the layout bin. I did talk about generational trauma and epigenetics last week. Also very interesting. Cambria, I definitely suggest you go back and watch that one. I think it's going to be really useful in your healing journey. Of course, today we talked about the vagus nerve. I may or may not talk about how trauma is held in your body. Next week, I'm kicking around maybe some other things. And then at the end of the month, I have my good buddy, Chasen Forehand, as guest, talking about how starting a nonprofit has been healing for him. And we are going to hear all about some of the cool stuff happening with that. For those of you that don't know, I'm the director of student wellness for Chasen's nonprofit, and his students getting skilled and trained in culinary, in the culinary arts. So I am stoked to have my buddy on the show at the end of the month. I also have guests coming in October. I got some cool people, guys. October's theme of content that we're kicking off a little bit early with Chasen here at the end of the month, based on his schedule and my schedule in October. It just didn't line up, but we are going to get started early. And October podcast themes and guests will be talking about how becoming an entrepreneur has been healing for them in their journeys. And I got some interesting people coming on. November, I have some other interesting people coming on, and the theme for November shows will be new takes on old issues. I got a couple of other mental health researchers and providers and practitioners coming on to share some things about that. So a lot of good stuff coming up in the year. Like I said, it took a while, guys. I'm super busy. I actually just listed it out the other day. I have 7 jobs, 7. I have my full-time psychotherapy job and 6 contract positions. Yes, y'all, like hustler, hustler over here. Being an entrepreneur is being a hustler. So what are all the things I do? I'm a licensed psychotherapist, specifically a licensed clinical social worker here in Virginia and licensed in Maryland. I am a multi-focused trauma-informed professional and leadership strategist. I coach and consult, speak and train on topics related to mental health care, and trauma-informed care and trauma-informed leadership. Also, if you are a clinician with a private practice, I'm a consultant for that, whether you want to start one or you have one, you have questions, you have clinical questions. I will also provide clinical consultation to licensed therapists who have those types of questions and issues. All right. Citing all my friends' podcasts. We already talked about Andrew Stout's Let's Be Diverse podcast. Go link up with him. and check out episodes. He puts them out, I think, even more frequently than my show comes out. So probably has had lots of guests on his. He always has a guest on his. So it's not the same kind of format as mine. Of course, my buddy Chasen has the Time to Change podcast. Super interesting. He and his co-hosts do a lot of cool stuff on there, and they end up having lots of cool guests too. Definitely inspirational. I would go check that out. The Empathy by Design podcast, hosted by one of my mentors and colleagues, Julie Johnson, through Integrate Trauma Informed Network, whose background is in education and instructional design, talks about, how we use trauma-informed principles in design of products, products for people, particularly mental health products, tech products, in addition to courses and other things. And then another one of my colleagues and mentors through Integrate Trauma Informed Network, Katie Kurtz, has the a Trauma Informed Future podcast, also has some very interesting guests in blazing the trail in trauma informed care in all industries and places. I have had the pleasure, I think, of being a guest on almost every single one of these shows. So if you want to check them out, go find the one that I'm on. And that might be very useful to you and a place to get started. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you matter, you are worthy, you are loved. Thank you, Cambria, for your message. Very interesting and helpful as per usual. She says, appreciate you. Thank you very much. Same. I appreciate you showing up. I'm glad that you learned something. Always wishing you well on your healing journey. Feel free to connect with all of my free resources and some past shows, Cambria, when you have some time. I think you're going to find them really helpful in your healing journey, since you have shared so much about what that has been like during chats on these shows. Thank you to Leanna. Thank you to Andrew. If anybody else dropped a comment in here and it didn't pop up on my thing, I will thank you for attending in the comments later when I have time this week, hopefully. Yeah, I think that's all for now. I will be here next Thursday on September 18th with a topic. I haven't decided if I've changed my mind on that. But tune in 11 a.m. Eastern on LinkedIn or YouTube for the Healing Hour. Find everything you need about me, the show, services, products I offer, things I've written, trained on, spoken on, etc., all on my website, www.sarahobrienlcsw.com. I look forward, let me see, I never do this well, so you guys can't see me at the end. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Hang in there, take care of yourselves first and always.